Right now, we are starting our show this morning by meeting Evan Thayer. We have the pleasure of speaking with him. He is a Utah snow forecaster. If you're not familiar with his forecasts, you really should be. He nails them every time, very specifically based on what resort you're going to, what elevation, and more. And Evan's here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Christine. It's good to be here.
Well, it's good to see you, good to connect even virtually, but I'm looking forward to learning more about you and how you are able to forecast so specifically. In fact, you provide very nuanced forecasts in different places around our state, especially up in our mountain areas. How are you able to forecast so precisely? You even will be able to state certain forecasts at the base area of a resort as opposed to up at the higher elevations. We're just curious, how do you do that?
Well, I appreciate all the flattery. I think there's a long way to go with my forecast still. I think there's always room for improvement. But for me, it's we use weather models, so I check these, and they're very detailed. The United States government, NOAA, the National Weather Service, has come out with all these very specific models that provide this data, and I check that every morning, and based on that, you look at temperature profiles, you look at the way the storm is coming in, and all of those things, all these variables, you put them together, and you can come up with a pretty clear picture of where it's going to snow. And then with elevation, you can factor in temperature, and you're going to get more snow and lighter, fluffier snow at the top elevations.
How long does it take for you to prepare a forecast? Because especially when there's a big storm coming, you're able to anticipate it and then get more specific as each day gets closer to the storm. How long is this process to collect all this data and then present it in a way that we can see exactly what's going to happen wherever we're going during that day?
It's very dependent on exactly what's going on. Like you said, some storms are more complicated than others. Some of my forecasts have as many as 4 or 5 storms over the next week, and some of them have as few as none or even 1 storm. So it's really dependent. I would say in a typical morning, it probably takes me about an hour to an hour and a half of looking at data before I start writing a forecast.
So a considerable amount of time, but we very much appreciate being able to anticipate and expect the weather wherever we're going. I'm curious, have you always been passionate about the weather? What is your background?
Yeah, so I always have been. For me, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation. I'm not sure what came first, my love for skiing or my love for snow. They obviously complement each other very well, but I was so young when I got interested in both skiing and weather that I don't remember which one came first. They just went hand in hand. So I've been skiing. I grew up in Tahoe, and I've been skiing since essentially almost since I could walk. My father was a volunteer ski patrolman. He was very passionate about the sport. We lived very close to ski areas, and so I was always up there skiing. And then for college, I was very interested in weather. I was a weather nerd. And when I went to school, I went to Colorado, which is kind of this mecca of forecasting. It's it's where a lot of the models are made. There's a NWS office there, and Colorado State, my alma mater, actually has one of the hurricane forecast centers for the United States. So I went there with the idea of doing forecasting. I also studied computer science. In the end, I actually decided to go the route career-wise of just doing computer science. I figured I could get a job in the mountains. I could move to Utah and find easy work, good paying work where I could ski and follow my passions. So I had actually kind of abandoned the weather side of things when I moved to Utah, and then this whole thing kind of snowballed, and now I'm back to forecasting and back to weather.
And you're a passionate skier. You're out pretty much every day. Is that fair to say on the slopes during ski season?
Yeah, I actually just tallied this up, and since I've lived in Utah, I average about 80 days a year of skiing. I frequently go over 100 days, but this year, because of the shutdown, I was kept to only about 75. So it was my lowest year since 2011, 2012.
And you recently, well, a couple of years ago, I believe, transitioned from being an independent forecaster to working with Open Snow through Utah.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that transition.
Right. So, this whole thing, I kind of say it happened by accident. And what I mean is I had no intention of starting this forecast that would be read by these thousands of people every day. It's just that I was a weather nerd. I knew forecasting. I knew how to read weather models, and my friends were reading it. So I was emailing them the forecast. I had a distribution list and they kept adding other people I didn't know. And eventually I just said, you know what, I'm going to put this all on a blog. You guys can go out and read it. And it gained in popularity. And that was WasatchSnowForecast.com. And I ran that for about 6 years. But a few years into it, I happened to get in touch with a couple other people, one, Brian in Tahoe and Joel in Colorado, and they were running similar forecast blogs. And we all started chatting, and it kind of came together, this idea of all joining forces and creating Open Snow. So there was a transition period there of a few years, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I went full-time onto Open Snow. And that gives me kind of a support team that we can all build features together. And it's a one-stop shop. A lot of these people, they're from the East Coast and they travel to all different areas. Now they can go to one website to get their forecast for Utah as well as Colorado or Tahoe or wherever.
So would you say working with Open Snow has really expanded your audience?
It has, yeah. I think especially that out-of-state audience. I think a lot of folks who maybe never thought of Utah as a place to go skiing, they had always gone to Colorado. They start reading my forecast because it's there, and they realize, oh, wow, Utah has a lot more powder days than Colorado. Shots fired. But, I really think that they see that, and then they go, next year we're going to take this trip to Utah. And so I think it really has expanded my audience.
Your forecasts have grown exponentially throughout the years. Where do you see your future as a snow forecaster? Where would you like to be in 5 years down the road?
I honestly would like to be doing the same thing. I have it pretty good right now. I ski a lot. I get to do something I'm passionate about. I don't want to see too much change. I want it just to kind of grow. But I think for me, a lot of the change is just going to be in the way people consume media. It's constantly changing. So we're kind of trying to update our website and our social media platforms to, incorporate different means of consuming media and consuming these forecasts.
And I noticed you're still publishing forecasts from time to time, even now. I saw one recently. So what do you do in the summer?
Well, the forecasts are just kind of condition dependent. We had that big, a couple of June snowstorms, earlier this month. And so I really felt I had to put something out there and talk about those because, believe it or not, a bunch of people hiked up and skied. So skiing was still happening. So I put out those forecasts. But typically the summer, that's our big development phase. We're kind of, just holding serve in the winter and focusing on forecasting. In the summer, that's where we really expand the features and add new functions. So if you go to Open Snow, there's an all access membership that gives you all these cool features. And we also now have a summer website. For years, people had asked us for mountain bike and hiking forecasts. We have a summer website called Open Summit. And Open Summit, there's also an app on iOS and Android, but that will provide really, really detailed hiking forecasts. And so we've been working on features for both Open Snow and Open Summit, and then we kind of lock in advertisers for the next season. There's a lot of work to be done in the summer.
Well, Evan, very much enjoyed talking with you, learning more about your forecast and about you. So thank you for spending some time this morning with us here on Park City Television. We are all big fans here. We are always following your forecasts and always appreciate knowing exactly what to expect when we hit the slopes.
Thanks so much, Christine. It was good to be on.
All right, we have more coming up on this Friday. Up next, we'll be speaking with Charlie Sturgis from Mountain Trails. Stay with us.